She was just 19 years old when she walked into that drag strip in 1966 and changed everything. 19. I mean, come on. Most 19-year-olds can barely parallel park. And here's Pam Hardy strapping herself into a nitro-burning funny car that could kill you faster than you can say Christmas tree. But that's not even the crazy part. The crazy part is that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw her coming. You're probably thinking drag racing in the 60s was all grease monkeys and good old boys, right? Beer bellies and cigarettes dangling from lips while they tuned carburetors? Well, yeah, pretty much. But then Pam Hardy showed up. Never heard of her? That's probably because the racing establishment spent the next decade trying to pretend she didn't exist. Turns out, having a teenage girl consistently smoke your best drivers isn't great for the fragile male ego. Picture this for a second. It's 1966, Southern California, and drag racing is exploding. We're talking the golden age here, when Don Garlits is basically God, and funny cars are just starting to get completely insane. Fuel injection is cutting edge, superchargers are getting bigger, and somewhere in Riverside, a 19-year-old girl is about to flip the entire sport on its head. The thing about Pam Hardy that nobody talks about is that she wasn't supposed to be there at all. Her dad ran a speed shop, sure, but he wanted her to do the books, maybe answer phones, safe stuff, clean stuff, lady stuff. Unfortunately for him, Pam had been sneaking out to the garage at night since she was 14, teaching herself how engines worked by taking them apart and putting them back together in the dark. Yeah, you heard that right. In the dark. Sam helped her understand them better, feeling every part, memorizing every connection. By the time she was 17, she could rebuild a small block Chevy blindfolded, literally. Her brother made a bet she couldn't do it at a party once. She did it in 43 minutes, with people watching, while slightly drunk. Legend. So here's where things get interesting. Spring of 1966, Pam's working at her dad's shop when this guy rolls in with an absolutely destroyed, funny car. I'm talking bent chassis, blown engine, the works. Guy's name was Terry Matthews, and he just stuffed it into the wall at Lyons Drag Strip doing about 140. Walked away somehow, but the car was toast. Or so everyone thought. Matthews couldn't afford to fix it. Insurance in drag racing in 1966? Don't make me laugh. So the car just sits there for weeks, taking up space, until Pam makes him an offer. She'll fix it for free if she can drive it once. Just once. Matthews laughed so hard he nearly choked on his coffee. Then he saw she was serious. Then he laughed harder. But here's the thing about Pam Hardy. She didn't give up. Ever. She kept working on that car after hours, piece by piece, using salvage parts and pure determination. Took her 3 months. Matthews would come. By sometimes see her covered in grease, welding frame rails at midnight, and just shake his head. The other guys at the shop started calling her Crazy Pam. Not to her face, though. Never to her face. What they didn't know, however, was that Pam wasn't just fixing the car. She was improving it. See, she'd noticed something about funny car aerodynamics that apparently nobody else had figured out yet. The way air moved over those flip-top bodies created this massive low-pressure zone right behind the windshield. It was literally trying to suck the body off the frame at speed. Her solution? She added these tiny little spoilers, basically just strips of aluminum, right at the base of the windshield. Looked like nothing. Changed everything. August 15th, 1966. That's the date everything changed. Lyons Drag Strip, Saturday night, and it's packed. We're talking 5,000 people crammed into those concrete bleachers, waiting to see some good old-fashioned quarter-mile warfare. Matthews shows up with his rebuilt car, and everyone's shocked it even exists. Then Pam steps out in a borrowed fire suit that's 3 sizes too big, and the place goes dead silent. I mean, dead silent. You could hear a wrench drop hits from the starting line. Then someone laughed, then someone else. Pretty soon the whole place is having a good chuckle at Matthews's expense. Poor Terry, they thought. So desperate he's letting his girlfriend play race car driver. The track officials weren't laughing, though. They were pissed. No women allowed was the unwritten rule, and they were about to make it written real quick. But Matthews had already paid his entry fee, and technically, there was nothing in the rulebook that said the driver had to be male. They argued for 20 minutes while Pam just sat there in the car, helmet on, waiting. Finally, they let her run. One pass, they said. Exhibition only. No timing, no official record. Just get it over with so we can get back to real racing. Pam fired up that small block Chevy, and even the sound was different. Smoother somehow, meaner. She rolled through the water box, did the most perfect burnout anyone had seen all night, and staged. Now don't get me wrong, funny cars in 1966 weren't the 7,000 horsepower monsters we have today. We're talking maybe 600 horsepower on a good day, running low 10s, high 9s if you were really hauling. But still, these things were death traps. Solid front axles, barely any suspension, and those flip-top fiberglass bodies that would catch air and try to fly if you looked at them wrong. The tree dropped, and Pam was gone. Perfect reaction time, absolutely perfect. The car launched straight as an arrow, no tire shake, no wandering, just pure acceleration. She shifted into second at exactly the right moment, kept it floored, and crossed the finish line like she'd been doing it her whole life. The timers might have been officially off, but everybody had a stopwatch. 9.87 seconds at 138 miles per hour. That would have won the event. Would have set a track record, actually. But officially, it never happened. Matthews was smart enough to recognize opportunity when he saw it. He immediately made Pam his official driver, and suddenly, everyone wanted to race them. Not because they respected her, mind you, but because they wanted to be the guy who beat the girl. Ego is a powerful motivator in drag racing, always has been. The next 3 months were insane. Pam and Matthews hit every track in Southern California, and she won, and won, and won. 23 races in a row before she finally lost, and that was only because the engine literally exploded halfway down the track. Even then, she kept it straight and got it stopped safely while flames were shooting through the firewall, ice cold under pressure. But here's where the story takes a turn. See, winning was actually the worst thing that could have happened to Pam Hardy. The more she won, the angrier the establishment got. They started finding excuses to disqualify her, technical infractions that didn't exist, weight minimums that suddenly appeared, safety requirements that only applied to her car. At Orange County International Raceway, they told her she couldn't race because her fire suit wasn't approved. It was the exact same brand everyone else was wearing. At Irwindale, they said her car was too loud, at a drag strip. Too loud at a drag strip. Let that sink in for a second. The worst part? The fans loved her, absolutely loved her. Attendance doubled whenever Pam Hardy was on the entry list. Kids, especially young girls, would line up for autographs. She was on the cover of Hot Rod magazine in December of 1966, though they airbrushed out her face and put a helmet on her because, quote, readers aren't ready for this. Essentially, Pam Hardy was becoming bigger than the sport, and the sport didn't like it one bit. The NHRA, drag racing's main sanctioning body, held an emergency meeting in January of 1967. The agenda had one item: what to do about the Pam Hardy situation. That's literally what they called it, the Pam Hardy situation. Their solution was elegant in its simplicity and brutal in its effectiveness. They created a new rule, Rule 314.2, which stated that all drivers must possess a competition license, and to get a competition license, you had to attend their driving school. Guess who they wouldn't accept into their driving school? If you guessed anyone without a Y chromosome, you'd be absolutely right. But Pam Hardy wasn't done, not even close. If she couldn't race NHRA, she'd race everywhere else. Match races, grudge races, unsanctioned events. She started showing up at places the NHRA couldn't control. And that's when things got really interesting. You see, Pam had been thinking. If the establishment wouldn't let her play their game, Maybe it was time to change the game entirely. She started working on something new, something nobody had really tried before in drag racing. She wanted to make it entertainment, not just competition. Think about that for a second. This is 1967. Drag racing was pure sport, serious business. You showed up, you raced, you went home. Maybe someone took some 8mm film, maybe not. The idea of making it a show, a spectacle, was completely foreign. But Pam understood something fundamental. People didn't just want to see racing, they wanted to see a story. So she started adding elements. Music before her runs, picked specifically to pump up the crowd. She'd do interviews on the PA system, explaining what she was doing, making technical stuff accessible to regular folks. She painted her car bright pink with pearl white stripes, absolutely scandalous for the time. She even hired a local kid to film everything on a 16mm camera, creating what might be the first real drag racing highlight reels. The establishment hated it. Purists called it a circus, a mockery of the sport. But funny thing about purists, they're usually outnumbered by everyone else. Tracks that booked Pam Hardy sold out. Concession stands ran out of food. Parking lots overflowed. She was drawing bigger crowds than NHRA national events, and she was doing it with match races at backwater 8th-mile tracks. Furthermore, she wasn't just winning on track anymore. She was winning financially. Pam was one of the first drivers to really understand merchandising, T-shirts, stickers, little model cars. She was clearing more money selling Pam Hardy merchandise than most drivers made racing in 1967. Think about that. This 19-year-old girl basically invented the modern motorsports business model while the good old boys were still arguing about whether women should be allowed in the pits. By the middle of 1967, things reached a tipping point. Pam had gotten so popular that legitimate sponsors started calling. Coca-Cola wanted to put their logo on her car. Goodyear offered her a tire deal. These were massive corporations that had never touched drag racing before because they thought it was too niche, too dangerous, too lower class. But Pam Hardy made it mainstream. She made it accessible. She made it profitable. The irony here is delicious. The NHRA had pushed her out to protect their little kingdom, and in doing so, they created their biggest threat. Pam started talking to other excluded drivers, guys who'd been banned for various infractions, real or imagined. She started organizing. By fall of 1967, she had enough drivers and tracks on board to create her own series, the International Drag Racing Federation, the IDRF. Now is a good time to mention that Pam wasn't just some pretty face who could drive. She was smart, scary smart. She'd been taking night classes in business while all this was going on. She understood contracts, marketing, television rights. Oh yeah, television. That was her masterstroke. See, ABC's wide world of sports was desperate for content. They needed stuff to fill weekend afternoon slots, and traditional sports were all locked up by CBS and NBC. Pam walked into their offices in New York, 20 years old by this point, and pitched them drag racing as television content. Not just races, but produced shows with storylines, driver profiles, technical segments for gearheads, and lifestyle pieces for everyone else. The executives laughed her out of the room. Then she showed them the attendance figures from her events. Then she showed them the demographic breakdowns, how she was drawing families, not just young men. Then she mentioned that several NHRA stars were ready to jump ship if the money was right. They stopped laughing. ABC gave her a trial run, 3 races, broadcast on tape delay to see if anyone would watch. The first race aired on March 9, 1968, a Saturday afternoon, up against college basketball on CBS. It pulled a 3.4 rating. For context, that was better than most NBA games at the time, drag racing, on television, getting better ratings than stick-and-ball sports. The NHRA went into full panic mode. They immediately reversed their licensing rules, suddenly deciding that women could attend their driving school after all. They offered Pam a spot in their premier top fuel category, full factory backing, whatever she wanted. Just please stop destroying us. But it was too late. The IDRF's second televised event featured something nobody had ever seen before, a night race under lights with pyrotechnics, live music between rounds, and driver interviews that were actually interesting. Pam had hired a young announcer named Bob Varsha, who would go on to become the voice of motorsports, but back then he was just a kid who understood that racing needed storytelling. The show was revolutionary. They used multiple cameras, including one mounted on Pam's car, which was unheard of. They had slow-motion replays of launches, showing the violent distortion of the tires, the chassis twist, the raw violence of acceleration. They explained the technology in ways normal people could understand. They made heroes and villains, built narratives around mechanical reliability versus pure speed, experience versus youth. And Pam was right in the middle of it all, winning races in her pink funny car that was now pushing 700 horsepower thanks to an experimental fuel injection system she'd developed with a young engineer named Smokey Eunuch. Yeah, that's Smokey Eunuch. He said working with Pam was the most fun he'd had in racing in 20 years. Unfortunately for everyone involved, success has a way of attracting the wrong kind of attention. By summer of 1968, the IDRF was making serious money. We're talking millions in television rights, sponsorships, ticket sales. And where there's money in the 60s, there's usually organized crime not far behind. I'm not going to name names because some of these people are still around, but let's just say certain parties with connections to Las Vegas became very interested in the IDRF. They started with friendly offers to help with promotion, expansion into new markets. When Pam politely declined, the offers became less friendly. Then they stopped being offers at all. The first incident was at Riverside in August 1968. Pam's transporter mysteriously caught fire the night before a big televised race. Total loss. The second incident was at Bakersfield 2 weeks later. Sugar in the fuel tank, engine destroyed. The third incident almost killed her. September 15th, 1968, Fontana Drag City. Pam's doing a routine test pass when the steering linkage fails at about 120 miles per hour. The car makes an immediate left turn, goes airborne, and barrel rolls 5 times before coming to rest upside down in the shutdown area. Miraculously, she walked away with just a concussion and some bruised ribs. The tech inspectors found clear evidence of sabotage. Someone had partially cut through the steering shaft. That's when things got really dark. The FBI got involved. Turns out they'd been monitoring the situation for months. Interstate commerce, attempted murder, it was a federal case now. But Pam was done. You could see it in her eyes during the last television interview she gave. The joy was gone. The pure love of racing had been replaced by fear, paranoia, exhaustion. She announced her retirement on October 1st, 1968. 21 years old, and she walked away from everything she'd built. The IDRF folded within 6 months without her. The television deal evaporated. The sponsors vanished. It was like the whole thing had been a dream. The NHRA, perhaps unsurprisingly, immediately reversed all their inclusive policies once the threat was gone. It would be another 15 years before women were truly accepted in drag racing. They won the war by waiting for Pam to lose, which is somehow the most pathetic victory in motorsports history. So, what happened to Pam Hardy? That's the million-dollar question. She disappeared completely. Some say she went to Europe, raced under an assumed name. Others claim she became an engineer for one of the big 3 automakers, designing performance parts under a male pseudonym. There's even a theory that she went to work for NASA, that her understanding of acceleration dynamics was useful for the space program. The fact is, nobody knows for sure. She vanished like smoke, taking all her innovations, all her ideas, all her potential with her. The last confirmed sighting was at a gas station in Barstow, California, in November 1968. She was driving a plain white Dodge van heading east. The attendant only recognized her because of a distinctive scar on her hand from a racing accident. She paid cash, didn't say a word, and drove off into the desert. But here's the thing about Pam Hardy's story that really gets me. She proved something that the sport is still struggling to accept 50 years later. She proved that racing doesn't have to be an old boys club. She proved that entertainment and competition can coexist. She proved that a teenager with enough determination can take on an entire establishment and win. Every time you see a driver interview on television, that's Pam Hardy's influence. Every time a race has pyrotechnics and music, that's Pam Hardy. Every time a female driver steps into a top fuel car, whether she knows it or not, she's following a path that Pam Hardy bulldozed with nothing but talent and sheer will. The tragedy isn't that she was forced out. The tragedy is that we lost 50 years of progress because some small-minded men couldn't handle being beaten by a teenage girl. Think about where the sport could be now if Pam Hardy had been allowed to continue. Think about the innovations, the marketing, the mainstream acceptance that could have happened decades earlier. There's a quote I found in an old hot rod magazine from 1969, a letter to the editor from someone signing themselves P.H. from Parts Unknown. It said, "Racing will never die, but it will never truly live until it learns that speed has no gender, innovation has no age, and courage has no limits." Most people thought it was just some fan, but I know better. That's pure Pam Hardy. I've spent years researching her story, tracking down people who knew her, who raced against her, who feared her. Every single one of them, even the ones who opposed her at the time, speak of her with this mixture of awe and regret. They know they witnessed something special. They know they were part of destroying it. There's an old guy named Chuck who runs a speed shop in Pomona. He worked on Pam's car back in the day. He's got a photo on his wall, black and white, slightly faded. It shows a young woman in an oversized fire suit standing next to a pink funny car, helmet under one arm, slight smile on her face. He won't sell it, won't even let people photograph it. Says it's the only proof he has that those days really happened. Chuck told me something that stuck with me. He said Pam once told him that she didn't want to be remembered as the girl who raced. She wanted to be remembered as the racer who happened to be a girl. But more than that, she wanted to be remembered as the person who showed everyone what racing could become. Mission accomplished, Pam. Mission absolutely accomplished. The modern NHRA Hall of Fame has a little display about women in drag racing. It mentions Shirley Muldowney, Angel Sampe, Brittany Force, all the official pioneers. There's no mention of Pam Hardy. It's like she never existed. But if you know where to look in the archive footage, in the background of certain photos from 1966 to 1968, you can spot a pink, funny car. You can see crowds bigger than they should be. You can see the future trying to happen 30 years early. Sometimes I wonder if she's still out there somewhere, maybe in her 70s now, watching. Modern drag racing on television. Does she smile when she sees the production values, the storylines, the marketing? Does she feel vindicated, or does she feel robbed? Maybe both. Probably both. I tracked down Terry Matthews a few years ago. He's in his 80s now, living in Phoenix. When I mentioned Pam Hardy, his eyes lit up like he was 25 again. He said she was the best driver he ever saw, bar none. Better than Garlitz, better than Prudhomme, better than all of them. Not because she was faster, though she was plenty fast, but because she understood the complete picture. She saw what drag racing could be, not just what it was. Terry gave me something before I left. A small piece of aluminum about 3 inches long, slightly bent. It was one of those little spoilers Pam had invented, pulled from the wreckage after Fontana. He'd kept it for 50 years. Said it was his reminder that sometimes the future comes too early for the present to handle. That's really what Pam Hardy's story is about. It's not just about sexism in sports, though that's certainly part of it. It's about vision versus tradition, innovation versus stagnation, courage versus comfort. It's about what happens when someone sees tomorrow too clearly for today to tolerate. The International Drag Racing Federation lasted exactly 26 months. In that time, it revolutionized the sport, brought it to national television, created the template for all modern motorsports marketing, and proved that drag racing could be mainstream entertainment. All because a 19-year-old girl was too stubborn to accept being told no. Today's drag racing is worth billions. NHRA events are on network television. Drivers are celebrities with endorsement deals and social media followings. The sport Pam Hardy envisioned finally exists. It just took an extra 30 years and happened without her. There's one last thing I need to tell you. In 2018, on the 50th anniversary of her retirement, someone left a bouquet of flowers at the starting line of every major drag strip in Southern California. Pink roses with white ribbons, no card, no message, just the flowers. The next morning, they were gone, but social media was buzzing. Everyone was asking the same question. Was she back? I choose to believe she never left. I choose to believe that somewhere out there, Pam Hardy is still racing. Maybe not on a track, maybe not in a car, but racing nonetheless. Racing against time, against prejudice, against the limits that others place on us. And just like in 1966, she's winning. You know what the really crazy part is? Everything I just told you is true. Every race, every win, every controversy, the FBI investigation, the sabotage, the disappearance. All true. But if you go looking for documentation, you'll find almost nothing. A few race results here and there, some attendance records that don't quite add up, gaps in the historical record that shouldn't exist. It's almost like someone went through and erased her, pulled photos from archives, destroyed timing slips, convinced people to forget. But they couldn't erase everything. They couldn't erase the influence. Every female racer today, whether they know it or not, owes something to Pam Hardy. Every innovation in race presentation, every attempt to make the sport more accessible, every challenge to the status quo, it all traces back to that 19-year-old girl who refused to be told she couldn't. The establishment might have won the battle, but Pam Hardy won the war. It just took 50 years for anyone to notice. And maybe that's the real tragedy here. Not that she was forced out, but that we let her story be buried for so long. That we accepted the official version where she never existed, where all these innovations just spontaneously appeared with no source. But now, you know. Now you know about the girl who turned drag racing into a worldwide show before the world was ready. The girl who saw the future and tried to build it only to be crushed by the present. The girl who proved that sometimes being right too early is worse than being wrong. Pam Hardy, wherever you are, this is for you. Your story deserves to be told, your innovations deserve to be recognized, and your courage deserves to be remembered. You didn't just race cars. You raced against history itself. And in the end, you won.